Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm Kevin Benedict. I'm your host today. I'm a futurist and lecturer at TCS, and I want to thank all of you for joining. Our guest is back again, a good friend of mine, Rob Tiffany. Rob, thanks for joining us.
It's so good to be back, man. Good to see you, Kevin.
So Rob has had all kinds of amazing positions at companies like Microsoft and Ericsson, and list a bunch more, Rob. Come on.
Hitachi, where I invented Lumada.
Yes.
Industrial IoT and digital twins.
That's awesome.
That's a good one. Yeah. Real-time data back in the early mid-90s where we invented the Internet of Things.
Not Al Gore?
Actually, we co-created it together. Al and I, I ran into him, I was like, hey, what if we had things on this weird internet deal? Okay. Yeah.
It's like when you have 27 co-founders of a company.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There's no limit. You could all be co-inventors of the internet.
No, you're so right. You're so right. Oh my gosh, so many crazy things.
I know. There. So in addition to all those great background experiences, you are research director at IDC today. I call you a national treasure because you've been in the middle of all the big inventions and developments over the last 20, 25, 30 years. And you're a submariner. I guess once you were a submariner, you're a submariner for life, right?
One ping only.
One ping only. There you go. And you've written books. How many books have you written?
I don't know. It's like 8 or 10.
That's too cool. Anyway, congratulations on an awesome career. May you experience many more years of that. So, let me just ask you, what are you focused on at IDC?
So IDC, kind of like any, different industry analysts at Gartner, IDC, Forrester, all the other, you do kind of have a topic area that you're zooming in on and go deep. And so for me, it's cloud, which sounds pretty broad. And so cloud infrastructure. And that doesn't just mean AWS and Azure and GCP or things like that. It's public clouds. It's the notion of private clouds, which we can get into, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, all kinds of stuff like that. And kind of the infrastructure behind it and the why that people are, so we have something called companies subscribe to what I write. It's called a continuous intelligence service, my CIS. And so I'm writing a bunch of stuff about all those areas of cloud, every quarter. I also am in charge of something called the Cloud Pulse Survey, which is kind of a big deal, believe it or not. You know how we always talk about getting the voice of the customer?
Yeah.
What's the customer, or in this case, the cloud buyer? What do they really want? And so getting feedback. And so I run the Cloud Pulse Survey, and that's a quarterly survey that goes out to, I don't know, about 1,700 decision makers at enterprises who are, purchasing, buying cloud stuff. And so, it's a huge survey, and they're answering all kinds of questions, and you get the deal. I mean, it's just like any other industry type thing. We need numbers. We need percentages. In order to say this is a trend happening, what's going on? Why are people doing this? And so Cloud Pulse is a big thing. And so it's like creating the survey itself, which is a monster and fun. And then the result is a giant Excel spreadsheet, believe it or not, like with 5,000 rows of stuff.
Wow.
It's cool though. There's like 2 tabs. There's a table of contents tab with hyperlinks that jump you over to the second tab and different sections talking about different types of things within the survey for that particular quarter. And so that's a deliverable. And so big tech companies pay money, big bucks for this survey output, because it helps drive their decisions, based on what are the customers, what are the biggest enterprises wanting and going.
That's awesome.
So they do that. And then I create along with that, I'll sit there and spend time. Can you imagine spending time where you got Excel in one window and PowerPoint in the other? And
Oh
basically
man.
turning Excel rows and columns into pretty charts and stuff, and to get like an executive summary.
Yes.
So do that. And
Um,
then the rest of the time I'm flying all over the place to conferences and every analyst briefings and things like
that's
that.
awesome. So if anybody is watching out there that's interested in all these cloud architectures and things, sign up to those newsletters. Rob, he's the guy. He's a national treasure. So, Rob, another question about that. Let's talk about all that stuff, everything that you're doing there in the context of AI, things like enterprise AI and private AI. How do
Yeah.
companies architect those environments and why do they do that?
No, that's a good question. No doubt I guess ever since people saw ChatGPT show up and went, oh, there's this other kind of AI, this deep learning stuff, generative. And so all these companies want to do it. And no doubt about it, for the bulk of this time, and still mostly now, it's a cloud thing. It's a public cloud thing. It's being driven, obviously OpenAI is in
Yep.
Azure. Anthropic is backed by AWS, Gemini at Google. And it makes sense because you need a lot of compute, right? But of course, we saw the launch of Stargate in January. I think a $500 billion investment. And I've
Yep.
seen some of the data centers being built outside of Abilene, Texas, in West Texas, my actual home, my birthplace, Abilene. Who would have thought?
Mm.
Yeah, they're probably thrilled to have big giant data centers. We're just going to pipe oil from the oil fields in the Permian Basin. For all of you who watch Landman, that's what I'm talking about. There's a lot of
Okay.
extra energy out there. So why would they do private cloud? Everybody's been moving to public cloud and leaving the on-prem
Yeah.
world, right? And you think, well, that's just going and it's never coming back. Well, it turns out, here's the boring part of private cloud or just traditional IT like we've seen for decades. There will always be some subset of workloads and data that cannot go to the public cloud for reasons of for regulatory issues,
Yep.
security, maybe latency, uh, data sovereignty. You hear things like that. What
Yep.
country am I in? What municipality? There always be something, especially with, highly regulated industries. They're just like, it's not going to happen. It doesn't mean most big segment won't go to public clouds, but there'll always be a chunk there. But we're seeing more growth there also because of AI. And the same old sad story that we've all heard was shortly after ChatGPT came out, two well-meaning engineers at Samsung accidentally just uploaded a ton of corporate data from Samsung in through ChatGPT. And guess what? It became part of the OpenAI LLM for the whole world to see. And it's like, oops. And so you hear a lot of the AI players are saying, oh, well, don't worry, we have mechanisms so that your corporate data doesn't leak. But the takeaway, what we're hearing is all these CEOs aren't buying that story at all, and they're paranoid about it. And so they go, we have our private data for our corporation, all the stuff that's our crown jewels. And what we'd like to do is we would like to have our own AI and train it, inference, all that kind of stuff. And so, which is a tall order, right?
Mhm.
It's not like every company has the horsepower to train models, like, all
Yes.
these foundational, these frontier models. And so I think also the other thing that got people thinking maybe we can do this ourselves. It probably started when the Facebook guys said Llama is going to be open source and you can download it, and a whole lot of people went, and so whatever version of Llama, are they on Llama 4 now? Anyway,
I'm not sure.
so there's this notion of, okay, a pre-trained model from Llama and Mistral in Paris,
Yeah.
and there's some others. I'll download that and run it on some serious infrastructure in my own data center, my colo, whatever I'm doing, and it's my private data. And so you take a pre-trained big model, and then you can either do fine tuning with your domain specific information to train it up on your stuff, or you can do the RAG thing on the fly, that kind of deal. And so we're seeing that happen. And so that's reflected in infrastructure purchases. So if you think of the big tech companies that aren't hyperscalers, so Dell, HP, Lenovo,
Yeah.
Supermicro, there's all these players that make servers
Yep.
that traditional. And so they're actually loving this. In fact, if you notice, you'll see a lot of them talk about liquid cooling. Like that's a big thing they're talking about is, yes, our servers have liquid cooling, and you open up the server and you see all this copper and stuff like that. And it's because AI gets really hot when you pop in those NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs, right? And also you want greater density, and so they can cram more servers together with this liquid cooling. And so I think it's going to be a combination of these kind of servers, primarily NVIDIA GPUs. Obviously, AMD's got some GPUs. They're kind of a distant second place. And then a really distant third place would be Intel with their Gaudi GPUs. I think they're on Gaudi 3. But they do have an option. I was just at the Intel event in Vegas a couple months ago, and Xeon server CPU processors. So the newest one, Xeon 6, they have this coprocessor, something built into it. It's called AMX extensions. Basically, that can do accelerated AI just built into Xeon. Not to be confused with something awesome like a Blackwell or anything, or an H200.
Yeah.
That being said, any LLM that's under like 20 billion parameters, you should be good to go with probably like a Xeon 6. So anyway, that's going on. And so all these players who are selling servers and all that stuff. And then there's the data center side of things. So you've got big players like Equinix, Digital Realty, NTT, those kind of guys. They've already positioned themselves to be the kind of your on-prem home. In fact, they all have those high-speed dedicated connections they're all like adjacent to the hyperscaler clouds.
Yep.
Because they want to look attractive to, yes, I got a lot of workloads in Azure, but here's my on-prem thing. And how they have, all of them have their own version of a dedicated connection, like Express Route or Direct Connect or all that. And what that means, it's like, remember the good old days? Because since you and I are not 25 anymore, we remember like provisioning private circuits back in the good old days. Remember how cool it seemed when you got your first T1?
No, I was never that nerdy, but Rob, I'll go along with it. Yeah.
So anyway, dedicated circuits, of course, it's fiber now and MPLS or whatever, and so it's insanely fast, but it's also private. It's not going across the open internet. And so some of these data center players are playing ball with the hyperscalers, and they're creating these direct, high-speed, low-latency, direct private connections. They'll go right into your instance, let's say at AWS and EC2 or whatever. And so you've got your private stuff, you got your public stuff. And also the other thing, have you ever heard of hyper-converged infrastructure?
Yep.
All right. I really feel like to really do a private cloud, you need hyper-converged infrastructure, because that does the best job of mimicking how a public cloud works. I just keep adding boxes.
Yeah.
It's got storage compute and everything, and it's all IP-based and it's all software-defined. And so that's a great way to go.
So Rob, let me just have you pause there for a moment and just ask you, does the business leaders in the board understand any of this? Or what are they trying to do and what are they trying to protect? So at a business level, how would they look at this? They've got a whiteboard and they're saying, okay, the regulations say I got to keep this stuff private over here, but then I just have my Salesforce stuff and I have my SAP stuff and all these different things. How does the board look at this?
They think they're building a brain for their company. Well, seriously, it's like like the Borg or something. I don't know. They're building a brain for their company. Obviously, company. What do they want? They want better productivity. They want to make more sales. They want to create more widgets, design things faster. And so, without saying all the negative stuff, like they want to replace employees with AI, because that's happening too. And so just like any other industrial revolution, right? And so that's what they want. And so that company memory, that company knowledge, and instantaneous, and then creativity and productivity and everything like that. And so they want that because companies are made up of so many data silos all over stuff. They already have a bad time just connecting that stuff. And so if they pour all the stuff about everything they do in their company and their products and everything, it can help their salespeople, help designers, help everybody. And so I know that sounds kind of generic, but at a broad level, that's what they want to do. And they want to be safe and secure about it because, these companies are paranoid as all get out. They don't want their secret sauce to leak out.
Let me give you a scenario. This is a pharmaceutical company. They're trying to create new kinds of cures and medicines and vaccines. Walk me through their process. They're sitting on 100 years worth of data.
Yeah.
It's in their databases, and they have all kinds of trials they've done. They have all kinds of everything from medicine that's currently used and in production and being distributed to brand new stuff. How would they think through this and they want to put an enterprise AI system on it so they can have the benefit of AI looking over all their secret sauce.
Yeah. And and the pharmaceutical is a great example of people doing stuff privately on-prem anyway. They're heavily on-prem already because of what they do, can't be out there. And so, step one, buy all this crazy infrastructure, all these servers, these networks, everything like that, high speed memory, maybe from a place outside of Boise. I don't know. You could get some good RAM from out there. And they put all that infrastructure together. And then you're right, they're going to grab one of these open source LLMs. And now we got these large reasoning models, LRMs. We've been reading some stuff from Apple about that actually recently. And they're going to have those come down and they're going to have their infrastructure. And then they're going to fine tune it. So now you're going to take that 100 years worth of research and data, just like you and I might upload a PDF or a Word document or everything we got. And magic happens because it's, because we've all done that with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. And it becomes part of that hive mind, right? And so they're going to start input, and so some of it will be tons of documents. I bet there'll be a lot more manual processes than they would prefer. Other things will be kind of like IoT. Or just streaming data, just streaming 100 years of stuff into this LLM to train it up, to fine tune it on their 100 years worth of medical stuff. And brain power, and then that's a coworker, and then so there's the coworker part of it, just like Jensen Huang, he's just like, pretty soon IT is actually going to be the HR department for AI agents.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
Who are your employees, right? Yeah, no, it sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? But obviously it's self-serving for him, right? Sell more GPUs, baby, and so. And so you can imagine all these really smart folks now they have a companion and they're working and, cooperating with this AI that now has been empowered with a lot of know-how. And we're already seeing AI aside from just the silly stuff people are doing, like thinking pictures, we're seeing AI just coming up with all kinds of cool breakthroughs, particularly in medicine. It's seeing things that needle in a haystack that we can't find. And so I think that's and so how do you start out? We'll start, like I've done it myself. You may have done it. I've downloaded Llama 3.2 on this laptop that I'm talking to you on. And I think I'm on Windows 11. I have PowerShell come up and I kind of talk to it through PowerShell to a local, I think it's 7 billion parameter one that I've got on my laptop that it can run okay. It'll be something like that. It'll start like ChatGPT. They'll start having conversations. And then that whole agentic stuff is going to take hold, and then pretty soon you'll be saying, "All right, I'm going to give you a mission. I need you and all your agent friends are going to go off, and I want you to cure cancer or cure, multiple sclerosis or whatever. And here's all the background data we have, and here's the rest of the world, and go have at it." And so I think that's what's going to happen. And so I don't think it's weird or out of bounds or extreme when you think about the pharmaceutical guys actually buying that kind of infrastructure to build that private AI cloud, that enterprise AI.
So there's the enterprise AI coming together with pharmaceuticals and generative AI advances to change the world. I when I'm giving a keynote presentation, I often will bring up just a scenario. I said, what if you go home on a weekend? You come back Monday morning and you've given your agents an assignment before you left on Friday afternoon, and you told it to go find innovations and opportunities for optimization in your business. So you come back Monday morning and you have 33,000 new ideas.
Yikes.
And you're staring at this saying, how am I ever going to get to this 33,000 new innovations and opportunities for optimization? Then you go home Monday night and Tuesday morning, there's another 33,000.
Yikes. Wow.
Here's opportunities to invent something new. Here's patentable discoveries. And you're just like,
wow,
okay.
That's a good point. I would probably Monday night, I'd say, give me the top 10 that you think are the best, because I don't have time to go through 33,000 of these things.
I know. And then I think, do you hire more people or do you just create another agent that prioritizes, right?
I'm just going to spin up another agent. The funny thing, Kevin, is, I was always into digital twins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, before I joined Ericsson, when I'm fiddling around between Ericsson and what I'm doing now at IDC, I was on my own doing a lot of stuff, and I was building. I thought of the idea of digital twin agents.
Yeah.
As employees, actually, I had a little, what did I call it? New Corp. And like lots of people do.
Yeah.
And I always thought, because it's funny to me now that you're hearing this agentic and you hear all these leaders saying, yes, it's an employee, just like your coworker and everything. But I always thought the digital twin should be at the core, because the digital twin is filled up with what is a salesperson or a secretary, but all these potential digital roles, where the digital twin is reflective. It's almost like, okay, what's the manual, the employee manual for this job, this role? Because what's a role, in a company? It's a collection of tasks that we want someone or something to perform, maybe one time or over and over again each day. When I was putting that together, I thought about AI. I also thought about just basic rules engines too, nothing sexy. But I thought that was the core of the stuff, and it's kind of running in the background. And then I also remembered, the big email that Jeff Bezos sent out in the early 2000s to all his employees, which says, I want our departments to interact with each other via APIs, just like people would interact with our website, and a lot of that gave rise to AWS. And so I'm like, okay, digital twin, it's running in the background process on your server, and maybe it's in a loop. And the digital twin structure about what it's all about says, I'm a salesperson. And then you program it. I interact with these different departments and these people and these customers, and I feed that in. And I talk to all of them via API calls. And so I was kind of building that, and I would apply AI to that where it made sense and other things. But, this notion of it being AI from the get-go, I guess you can do that, but it seemed interesting to me, because I was at a conference, I think in 2018. It was like an oil and gas conference, and someone from Chevron. You've heard of companies like UiPath, the ones that are doing the RPA okay, and so basically taking all those tens of millions of Win32 apps that were built in the 90s with Visual Basic, and the little robots clicking all the buttons and does all that stuff. And I remember I was struck by a comment a woman from Chevron made. She said, well, I guess we have to treat it like an employee at Chevron. And this RPA agent that's doing these tasks, and we even put it into Active Directory as if it was a real employee. And so this agent thing, this is 2018, thinking about the early days of RPA, we're going to put an Active Directory. And I was like, wow, that is interesting, novel thinking there. This thing is an employee. And so when I fast forward, I was like, yeah, digital twin of all these different types of employee, and it's active, it's alive, it connects with APIs, and it's going to be an Active Directory or whatever, because it's an employee now and whatever, except you don't have to pay it, I guess, And so, I thought this could be a thing. And so now today, everybody's just talking about agentic AI and, and it's also going to be an employee, and it's got its tasks and whatever, and however that's going to work. And
So
it's a
let's
pretty
think.
interesting world.
Absolutely. Let's think this through. I think they should be paying Social Security. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We should be
Yeah.
investing in my 401k plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then go for it, and
Right.
then maybe every robot that you apply that gets hired can also support 5 to 10 people's universal basic income.
Yeah. And I
And
think
then
this
go
is
for it,
I
right?
think this is where you and I are going to have to solve this big quandary, this problem
Yeah.
that people are pretending might not happen. If you're on the AI side, if you're one of the builders of one of these companies, you're saying that we're headed towards a future of abundance and it's going to be magical.
Yes.
And then there's these other guys who are like, oh, make all the money you can in the next 5 years because it's all going to be over.
Yes.
And smart people are saying that. And actually, smart people who have left some of these AI companies are like, you're going to see mass unemployment like you've never seen before. And so this gets to a philosophical debate and a policy debate at a government level. And I think you and I are going to figure this out right now, actually.
Okay. Let's
You
do
talked
it.
about you talked about UBI and stuff like that. Because there's no question about it. It's easy to say abundance, and it's gonna, we're just gonna be walking around leisurely, and stuff's gonna be given to us. But we know we don't live in that society today. We live in a society where I have to work at a company and they pay me, and that's how I'm alive to buy food and shelter. You and I know, as soon as any company can replace you as an employee with AI to do the same tasks, they will.
Yep.
And the evidence for that is just look at history. It always happens every time, even though the companies say employees are our most important, whatever. But that's never the case. And so these AI employees, as you're saying, they're going to start taking over more and more jobs. I'm already seeing it. I'm seeing mass layoffs all over. Hey, man, try to be a developer now. Oh, good luck. It's hard.
Challenge. So let me just put in a plug for my own article. I just published an article right before we started our recording here, Rob. It's called Navigating Toward Human Flourishing in the Age of Acceleration. And I'm sure there's an acronym that.
Yeah.
But look up Kevin Benedict if you're interested, and go to my blog, Navigating Toward Human Flourishing in the Age of Acceleration.
I'm interested.
It's all about that fun stuff. So that notion is that people can use, our discussion here is kind of futuristic, maybe not even that far, but let me just ask you this. As a futurist, I'm very interested. Are you seeing companies building foresight engines, which are simply using AI to look forward based on the data they have and the market data that they're bringing in? And it seems like that would be a bigger and bigger deal for all companies. We certainly advocate that all successful companies need to have foresight as part of their core functionality. Are you seeing people use their data in architecture so they can have forward views into the market?
Yeah, they probably. I don't know if I've heard anybody call it a foresight engine. I like that, but they certainly use the term roadmap.
Yeah.
For what their products are going to do, services, whatever, and planning into the future and letting AI help inform them of what the best route to go is. Mm-hmm. And I can hardly wait to read your paper. They're going to do that, and they're going to say, we're going to need fewer and fewer employees to deliver these goods, and services or whatever over time. And then when do you get to the threshold of unemployment where enough people are unemployed, where unrest happens throughout society?
It doesn't even have to take that many, right?
I don't know what percentage of the population will need to be in it. Because here's the deal. There's no abundance that happens. No one just pays you to not work. As soon as you're not working, you're not getting cash. You're not getting money. You might be on unemployment for a little period of time, but then you'll be off of it. And so this is a policy issue for futurists to inform the government, the administration, Congress. This is a big deal. because we're going to have more and more people laying around, not working and everything, and then they're not going to be able to eat and all that kind of stuff. And so you mentioned UBI, that's been a huge discussion, and I feel like it hasn't been talked about lately. There was a surge of it talking about it maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and it was hot to trot. But it feels like it died out. We've had this low unemployment rate, and so maybe people think, oh, we're fine. We've got to do something because people need purpose. People need a way to eat and live and have a life. And so when companies stop paying you, now, of course, this is also going to bite companies that, on that futurist look and that engine. Hopefully, we'll see, it will tell them that at some point, so many people will be not working that no one will be left around to buy the products, goods, and services that you're making and selling.
Absolutely.
And then you're screwed. And this all this great productivity you got from eliminating all these costs bites you in the ass, is what happens. And so this is a thing. And so is it UBI? I think futurists and other policymakers, this could be the challenge of our lifetime, actually. Yeah. And it's so serious. And so what are you going to do about it? Are we going to have a future that's like Logan's Run? Or are we going to have to put everybody into the matrix to pacify the population and have them dreaming that they're having this great life?
Yeah.
That sounds kind of dystopian, but.
Right. So my opening sentence on this article: in the age of acceleration, our most pressing question is no longer what is possible, but rather what is purposeful.
Yeah. People need purpose. If you don't have purpose in life,
they need
you're
a paycheck.
rudderless. Yeah. You need purpose and you need a paycheck. You are so right. This is a big deal. Do you remember that guy Andrew Yang who ran for president?
Yeah,
a few times back.
Yeah.
He was talking about because he's a tech guy like us, and he was a VC, and I'm sure most people thought he was crazy or something because he was saying, the number one job in every state in America is truck driver, and I remember watching stuff on TV. He was like on 60 Minutes, and they're on automated 18-wheelers and stuff like that. And it was just like, this AI stuff is coming and it's going to come for your jobs. And that's when he started doing he was the only one talking about UBI, and he started paying people UBI as an experiment and stuff like that. And I don't know if people took him seriously or not. I did, because we're in the space. And I was like, no, he's seeing something that no others not seeing. And maybe it's not sexy to talk about it when you're trying to run for president.
Yeah.
But his view was,
obviously,
this is going to be this stuff is so much more important than what the right and left are bickering over. The stuff they think is important today will be nothing compared to what's coming in the future with this AI takeover.
Wow, our discussion went from hybrid cloud and enterprise cloud and on-premise cloud to changing the world, and I love it. Rob,
I love it too.
Thank you so much for joining on the program today and helping me go wild.
This is great. We got a lot of stuff to figure out, don't we?
Absolutely. if we don't get laid off first.
Exactly.